Good morning, gorgeous. Good morning, gorgeous. Don't forget to smile as you look radiant as you are the queen of your Nile. Wake up, beautiful. It's time to spread your wings. Open up your window. Hear the bluebirds as they sing.
Welcome to Good Morning Gorgeous, your Saturday morning dose of inspiration. I am Sharonda Steele, and
I am yours truly, Larissa Williams.
and we are so incredibly excited and honestly just blessed to have our guest for today. We have Miss Kristina Gamble, who is just a phenomenal woman in all rights, but I think really have an incredible story that we'll share a little bit later. But first, let's just start off. Kristina, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, thank you. I'm so happy to be here on Good Morning Gorgeous. Thank you so much for the invite. As Sharonda said, I'm Kristina Gamble, and I'm originally from Franklin, Kentucky. It's a little place on the map. Most people don't know where it's at. But if you're familiar with the Western Kentucky University, Bowling Green area, I'm 15, 20 minutes out from there as far as my hometown. Born and raised in Franklin, Kentucky, a proud hilltopper, received all of my bachelor's, master's, and will receive my doctorate from Western Kentucky University as well. A proud member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And I am currently the director of the Black Cultural Center here at Berea College. But least but not last, as far as last but not least, I am the mother of Carmelo Gamble, and that's my heart 11-year-old son.
Oh, that's awesome.
That is so awesome. Miss Gamble, thank you for joining Good Morning Gorgeous. And I want to say to you, good morning, gorgeous.
Good morning.
Yes, I always have to put that in there because we have to inspire ourselves, and we have to inspire each other.
Right.
So I just want to let you know that you are looking good this morning, Miss Gamble.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Both of you are as well. So
Thank you. Thank you. But a question that I have for you right now is, so you're from Western Kentucky. So what prompted you to move from Franklin County to transfer and to start a job at Berea College?
Yeah, great. So I've always been an activist at heart. My mother is white from Eastern Kentucky, the mountains. My dad is Black. And so I grew up in a predominantly Black community called Harristown and Paradise Estates. And my passion for activism, there was a lot of inequities, a lot of discrimination issues still going on in the 90s and early 2000s. And I always knew that my purpose, I always say that I'm purpose driven. And my purpose in life really was to be a voice for the oppressed and for the marginalized. And so I went into college, sociology, that definitely was my passion. And I kind of came between a crossroads of, do I want to teach full time and be a professor? Or did I want to go on and do more practical type work with center work, with programmatic type work? And I really love both. I believe that learning happens inside and outside of the classroom. And I was really happy with my position at WKU. I worked in their intercultural center, really, really loved it. But I always tell my students that when you find yourself in comfortable spaces, then it's time to probably move on so that you can grow. And so that's really what I had to do, was challenge myself, because I was so comfortable. I didn't see growth happening. I just found complacency. And so I was at the point in my life where I was like, God, if it's meant for me to move on from Bowling Green, from Western Kentucky University, then just give me a sign. And literally one day, just looking at higher ed positions, the Berea College position came up. And it was the Black Cultural Center position, and it was a director position. And at that time, I didn't feel like things would align right, because I didn't have any experience being an assistant director, associate director. I had been a program coordinator for 5 years and loved it. But I was like, oh, there's no way they're going to select me. You know, I didn't have my PhD yet. But I truly believe that when it's your time to move, and
Yes.
he will put those stones in the pathway for you. And so things just aligned. They did happen, and I applied and I got the position. And even moving during COVID, I accepted the position without even stepping foot on the campus. But that was my faith. That was my trust in the Lord and his purpose for me. And so that's why I'm here. And I truly love it, because a lot of colleges and universities have moved away from Black cultural centers and focus more on multiculturalism. But I'm a firm believer that Black cultural centers, they deserve to have a spot on campuses, because here in Berea, you can't have the interracial aspect of our college without focusing on the Black history and Black culture.
Mm-hmm. So good.
Wow.
You know, we've had a number of conversations, and when I tell y'all, Kristina is a powerhouse. Especially when we talk about issues of diversity, equity, inclusion. There's so much wealth and knowledge and experience floating through her veins, but also on a personal level too. She has, you know, she is a survivor, and she's been able to crash and knock down many barriers that come up in her life. And I know this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And she shared a story with me once that literally brought me down to my knees, because when we see folks like her, and they're strong, and I hate to use that word strong, but they are very boisterous and they speak with power, and they seem so confident, we almost forget about the story behind the person. And there are so many women out there that, one, we see the outside, the beautiful, the courageous outside, but we forget how they got to that point. But then we have other women that are not there yet, that need to know that story so that they know that they can get to that point when, you know, when they're ready for that. And I know we've had some conversations before about your issues or dealing with domestic violence. And because we are a Domestic Violence Awareness Month, you know, I wanted us to just take a little second to just talk a little bit about that, because I think women need to hear that story, or need to hear the story, to be able to help them. So would you mind just sharing a little bit about that piece of you?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I talked earlier about my activism and my passion for it. And I think that a lot of my activism, they fall into two categories: my interests and then experiences that I've went through. And talking about domestic violence is definitely something that falls in that experience category. I didn't set out, you know, wanting to be an advocate, or bring awareness to domestic violence, but my experiences really brought me to do that. And I will say, all the invites that I get to talk about diversity and inclusion and equity issues, I mean, that's in my wheelhouse. I'm able to talk about it all day long. I am very selective about where I talk about domestic violence, because it's something that really hits at the core, and I always want to go on the right platforms. And so this is really probably only publicly the third platform that I've spoken to or spoken at regarding domestic violence. So I'm so honored to be able to do so, and to be able to talk to your viewers, and hopefully something resonates. I will say that domestic violence for me really started right after I graduated with my first degree. I was out celebrating graduation and met the father of my son, and we kind of hit it off. He was very different from me. I'm one of those people that I always like, you know, I'm an activist, so I'm a little edgy, even though I'm the type of person, you know, would probably be classified as someone who follows the rules usually, unless it's social justice issues. But he was someone that was kind of on the edge, you know, it was kind of mysterious. But a lot of my family members liked him. I mean, took him to my grandmother's house, and you know, he was very charming and charismatic. and we really hit it off. And so it started off little things that he would say and do to me verbally. First he kind of built me up and said, you're beautiful, and I love you, and I had confidence. But then when we became like an actual official couple, those things kind of dissipated, and it was more the controlling things. Like, I like your hair to be flat ironed only. So as I flat iron my hair, a lot of times I'll have flashbacks to him telling me that. So I really don't flat iron my hair a lot. Ironically, I have it flat ironed today, but usually I don't, because he controlled me in that way. And I thought, oh, this is just what my man wants, so I'm going to do what he wants me to do, just because that's something that he likes. It's just a preference. But then it became what I wore. Then it became, looking at my mileage and seeing how long it would take me if I said that I had to go run an errand. We eventually moved in together, but there were red flags even before we moved in together. But I didn't grow up in an abusive home. I have a loving father and mother, even though they divorced. Things never got to a point to where there was domestic violence. So I didn't really have that scope of understanding. This is someone who's educated. I didn't grow up in that type of home. Besides watching things on the movies, like, I really didn't understand what domestic violence really was about. And really it started, I remember the first thing he did to me he got mad that I was going somewhere with my sorority sisters, and he jerked my hand. And I'm like, oh, that was like, oh, he's just really, he just really loves me. And it's really sad, because I wish I would have walked away and never, continued a relationship with him. But then it got worse. And one of the first times that it got super physical was he wanted to go somewhere in my vehicle instead of his. And I told him no. And I was sitting in the passenger side, and he got into the driver's seat, and I refused to get out so that he could leave. And so he took his hand and put it in the back of my head and hit my head in the dashboard of the car. So blood immediately started to come up on my head. And, I was embarrassed. When you hear people talk about domestic violence, you hear them talk about, oh, couldn't be me. She better than me. Couldn't be me. I would do this and I would do that. And you had this image of a meek woman, a docile woman. And I'm none of those. I'm outspoken, I'm loud, I'm vibrant, I'm strong, I'm confident. But domestic violence can happen to anyone. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't discriminate across race, gender, socioeconomic status. But I was embarrassed to tell people. And so he, when I was pregnant, he flipped over the bed with me on it. And so when I was pregnant with my son, I was sandwiched in between the bed and the actual wall in our house. He played Russian roulette with me. So when I was about 8 or 9 months pregnant, I was sitting in the car, and I left him, but because we were having a baby together, I would share ultrasounds and we would try to talk about co-parenting. But I was just trying to survive, and I was almost just living, in a daze. But at that particular night, he did the Russian roulette thing where he had one bullet in the chamber and he put it to my head. And I saw, we were actually at a gas station, but I saw the police sitting, probably looking for people who were speeding across the street. And I wanted to reach out, but he said, you better not. We'll both die tonight. And so he did click the gun, but luckily that wasn't the chamber. So it didn't go off, but then he threw the bullets at me, and I was picking out bullets from my car for days, that I would just find bullets, in the back and under stuff, under the seat and things like that, where he had just thrown bullets at me. And so we really, I think about it, I'm so thankful to be alive.
Yes.
The last incident, just wrapping up kind of everything, it's hard to talk about. So, I mean, this relationship was not a long relationship. We're talking about, a year of just agony and turmoil. But one of the final things that happened was I did EPOs. He kicked down my door. I would go to the court. He would make me feel bad, and I'm the father of your child. And, you know, those types of things. But I did try to get, you know, assistance through the court system, and I would, but then those would last for so long. And one of the last times is that he kind of held me hostage, me and my son, when I gave birth to my son. He was 3 months old, and he choked me till I passed out. I had bruises. I had strangulation marks. I had contusions in the back of my head. He broke every single dish in my cabinet, except this one. And I carry this around with me when I do speak about domestic violence, because like this saucer, like this little dish, we were the only, you know, we survived. And I keep it as, no matter where I go to, no matter how much I upgrade the cabinets and the silverware, you know, I never forget. I always take this with me. So even here in Berea, it traveled with me because it's a reminder. This is the only thing that I had left in my kitchen cabinets from that last encounter with him. He, you know, at knife point had me to drive and eventually take him to another place. It was actually another mother of one of his kids, and she saw me bloodied and bruised in the car and called the police herself, and he was on the run for a while, but they ended up finding him, and he ended up getting I think a 6-year sentence. But after spending time in there doing programs and stuff, he ended up doing about 2 years.
Wow. Wow. And, you know, to think that a mother of one of his other children was the reason that you were able to get that help, right? Where sometimes you have women that are like, oh, I can't stand her. That's the mother of his, you know, baby and all the baby mama. But, you know, she was able to get you help, and now you're here today.
Yes. Oh, thank you, God.
And every time I see that plate, it goes through me every single time, because we have other women that are experiencing things that don't know, you know, how do I get out? What do I do next?
Yeah.
But them being able to understand that there is life after domestic violence is important.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
you know, we could probably have these conversations, you know, we could talk about this all day. I do think it's important, and I do think the more and more we can spread the message to women that there is life after, and you can get help, you can get away, and even others around that may see something but think that's their relationship, you know, being able to be that person to intervene and go, something is not right about this, and I need to get this person some help. You never know how much that really will benefit and help another person, because had she not called and got you help, we don't know where that would have landed, you know. And now you're here now being able to share that story and to be able to be with your incredibly amazing son, Mello, who is like a little man in his own right, you know.
Definitely.
And to be able to raise him now to be that man, that figure, that person that would not become what his father was. But if there's any other message that you would want to share to anyone out there, any of our ladies or males or whomever, what would that be as we kind of think about this topic, which could be really heavy, right? For a lot of people,
right?
It's necessary.
Yeah, I think I wore one of my pins that says "Love shouldn't hurt." You know, during this month we wear purple. We wear purple, and I know that, you know, it's also October. We think of breast cancer awareness, which is dear to me as well, due to family members that have survived and some who didn't that fight. But for the domestic violence victims out there, you know, in order to recognize what love is from the way that others treat you, you really have to work on loving yourself. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. If you don't treat you right, someone else treating you bad it doesn't seem to register, right? Because in your mind, you don't have that self-esteem and you are already beating yourself up. I mean, many of us as women, whether our weight or, we haven't accomplished everything that we want to accomplish, and we self-negative talk ourselves, like we put ourselves down. And so when we have others do it, it just kind of seems normal.
Yeah.
And so I want women out there, and I also want to say, it's not, there are men who are being abused as well. But if you are someone who struggles with self-love, work on that first, because really you have to work on that before you should even want to get into a relationship. Because you shouldn't look to others, whether it's your friends or your family or significant others, for validation. You are beautiful. You are gorgeous. As y'all's podcast is called, you have to really believe that.
Yeah.
And I would also say, for those of us who talk about domestic violence, we watch TV shows, you're with your girls, you're having a girls' night, and you watch certain people, you might see domestic violence and you make little jokes and stuff. And for those individuals who are really going through it, it's not a joke. And it could also kind of discourage them for speaking out about it. Because like I said, I was ashamed. I tried to hide it as long as I could. And I always tell people, anyone could be a victim of domestic violence, but also you can be a survivor. And it doesn't have to be the ending of your story. It's simply a chapter. You have, a whole life ahead of you if you're able to survive. There's domestic violence shelters out there. I was recommended to go to a shelter, but they found him before I had to actually move in a shelter. But yeah, I would just love everyone to focus on loving themselves first, but recognizing some of those. I mean, a lot of domestic violence doesn't start out with a punch. And so I used to try to justify my situation as, well, he didn't black my eye. I mean, but eventually, it did get real physical, where I had bruises and cuts and my hair pulled out and things like that. And he doused me with lighter fluid and things like that. But there, at the very beginning, there were signs. And so even someone being controlling, watching your mileage, following you home from work, or when you say you're going out for brunch with your girls, like all of those things are signs and red flags of domestic violence. And it doesn't have to always be physical. A lot of the stuff happens, a lot of the actual abuse is emotional abuse first. So I would just say, be mindful of that, and to, if someone reaches out to you, help them. Even if you don't know where to find help, you can Google information. There's, in a lot of the larger cities, there's always a shelter or some type of resource for domestic violence victims.
That is so good. Thank you so much for coming on today. And I do think that you are the example of, right? You do not have to be a victim, but you can be a victor. And there is life after domestic violence. I mean, you've had lighter fluid doused on you, a gun to your head, and look at you right now. You'll be soon to be Dr. Kristina Gamble. Shout out. So, I mean, and being able to still make differences in the lives of young people, and, and having your message not only in terms of academics, but that personal side. I'm really hoping that resonate with women, especially if they're dealing with this, to seek help.
Right.
And just to know, like, you can get out of this and you can get through it, and you
That's
can
right.
overcome it. And I'm hoping that this will be able to, whether someone watch it now, a year from now, 5 years from now, to know that you can get help. And this is just, Kristina is a prime example of someone that was able to get out of a situation. And those of you that are on the sidelines, you make a difference too. If that had not called to get her some help. So if you're noticing something, please make sure that you're able to help the person that you're around, that you see are experiencing these things.
Yes.
get ready to close out. And I'm so glad you talked about that identity thing with self-love. Because with Good Morning Gorgeous, that's what we want all women to be able to see, to have, to internalize, to change that mindset of being able to love who you are. Because if you don't, you cannot expect anyone else to.
Yes.
Start with that. Saying the words every single day, you know, looking in that mirror, making sure you talk to yourself, spend time with yourself, right? Date yourself, love yourself.
That's right. Yeah. Tell yourself good morning, gorgeous. I
Yes.
mean, you all did it today.
Every morning.
Tell yourself, play that Mary J. Blige. You know, sometimes I'll blast that Mary J. Blige. I told Sharonda, you know, when I heard about the podcast name, and I'm like, play that Mary J. Blige, Good Morning Gorgeous, and truly believe it when you say it, because words have power.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And
there's a shirt
until you believe it.
Right. And there's a shirt like Sharonda had on yesterday when we were doing our workout, and I came across this, and I put that on a lot of shirts. That's one of my little side gigs I do. I love doing designing shirts, and I come up with these thoughts, and then I'll put them on a shirt. But one of them, it says, "Be you, do you, for you." And if you don't do those things for yourself, nobody else is going to do it for you. That is something that we have to instill in ourselves every day. We have to tell ourselves, I love me. I love who I have become.
That's right.
I am becoming, because there are always changes that we can make in our lives to make ourselves better. We ourselves are the ones that hold us back.
Right.
We hold ourselves in bondage. But once we can release ourselves and let go, but we first have to inspire ourselves, because we can't inspire someone else if we don't inspire ourselves. We can't love someone else unless we love ourselves first.
Yeah. So good. This is the one time that I always tell people, you can fake it until you make it. That is okay, right? Because it's a mindset shift, it's habits. You have to do it regularly so that you can internalize it. Fake it till you make it. Say good morning, gorgeous, every single morning. Tell yourself you love yourself every single day, because the more and more you do it, you internalize it, and then it'll show outwardly. But thank you so much, Kristina. I know you have a lot going on there today. You know, I really, truly appreciate you coming on. We are definitely going to have you back, because there's so many other layers to who you are beyond just the story of domestic violence. And I cannot wait for others to hear more from you. But as we get ready to close out, as we already said here with Good Morning Gorgeous, we want you to find yourself,
believe in yourself,
and love
yourself.
Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening in today. We appreciate you for being here.
Thank you.